Reverend Kathleen Rollins, Carmen Scarluca, and Reverend Diana Carroll.
Good evening, members of the board. Good evening to those I know are listening and watching on video and who will be watching and listening on video. Ms. Scarluca is not able to be with us this evening. I am Dr. Mary DeJoni. I'm standing before you as a resident of Arundel County. I know that my name and face and voice may be familiar to you from other times I've testified before this board, so I want to be clear that tonight I'm standing here as an individual resident of this county. There are others who will be speaking following me who will be representing specific groups. I want to speak to you about the role of the citizen, the role of the board, the breadth of the identity of our community, the need to respect that breadth, and to extend an offer to work together. It was early in my work as an advocate, a learner, that I began to appreciate that the role of citizen is much more demanding than I had ever before appreciated. I understand the role and the burden you carry. It was easy to neglect the role and the burden that I carry. I, as a citizen, have a responsibility not only to vote, to be an informed voter, to speak to you, before you, to advise you, to let you know what my issues are. And all of us are here to do that tonight. You, as member of the boards, come in with your best intentions and best knowledge, but you do not know the lived experience of people not like yourselves, and sometimes that's a problem. Mr. Lieb, you have been called out because your Facebook posts were public. There are others of us, of you perhaps, who've had equally, I will use the word offensive, Facebook posts that haven't been found out, or perhaps you didn't post on Facebook. But every one of us carries biases based in our own ignorance. I do not wish to speak solely to Mr. Lieb's posts. They are an example of a problem. For several of us, as we walked in this evening, we were greeted by a light sign on the side of the building, right out there, that said, "We are all in this together." And that's true. We're all in this together. The kids who hang nooses and the children who are traumatized by seeing nooses. The children who are suffering from or gifted with different perceptions and abilities, and the teachers who are frustrated by them. We are all in this together. Those who are distinctly gendered in traditional ways and those who are not. I want to offer the idea that there are really no others. We are all in this together. None of us have a chance of understanding those that we might think of as other unless we hear the stories. I'm here, we are here to help bring the stories. That's our job. Your job is to hear and understand the stories. We are here to offer our expertise. Call on us, any of us. You know how to reach us. Our names and numbers are on the sign-up cards, but you know us. We have a lot to teach you. Please take advantage of it.
Thank you, Dr. Danoni.
Good evening, members of the board. My name is Sarah Davis. I am the parent of 5 children with disabilities attending Anne Arundel County Public Schools. We are also a military family, and I am a person with a disability. As a family who experiences disability, we are discriminated against on a daily basis in both small and large ways. Yesterday, after she misunderstood her teacher's instructions, my daughter was chastised in front of her peers, and her teacher asked her to write a letter thanking the teacher for not giving her a 0 on an assignment. I've just passed to you that letter for your review. This is not a teacher who had any ill will towards my child. These teachers are doing their very best work with large class sizes. This is simply a matter of not understanding the needs of someone who learns differently. Lily's takeaway from these ongoing experiences is that she is different, that she is less than, and that she is not normal. I've also passed to you a graphic that my daughter wrote reflecting that view. Lily navigates a world that is not always welcoming to people who do not neatly fall into gender norms. And we need funding and training and support for our schools to include all of our children effectively. We need to make sure that we are supporting our teachers. I spend countless hours volunteering at my children's schools to make sure that the teachers that they work with have extra time with their children because we are not properly supporting our teachers. And we need changes in public policy. For example, we do not need restraint of a child to ever show up on a behavior intervention plan. That is not a behavior intervention. Restraint is an indication that the behavior intervention plan has failed. I noticed during the presentation we did not have a slide on the gap for children with disabilities. It is reprehensible. It is 20 percentage points below our other children. Where is that slide? Why aren't we watching the tracking the reduction in that gap? I urge all Board of Ed members to make sure that they are receiving the proper sensitivity training, the proper disability awareness, the proper awareness of the various subgroups within our community to ensure that all viewpoints are represented by the people that we have making the decisions for our children, and that we are celebrating diversity in all of its forms. This is critical to making decisions for all of our children. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
Good evening. My name is Reverend Kathleen Rollens, and I serve as the interim senior minister at the Unitarian Universalist Church in Annapolis, along with Reverend John Crestwell. We pastor a congregation of about 400 adults, 160 children and youth and young adults, some of whom currently attend or will attend the Anne Arundel County Schools under your watch. So I am here to speak about the comments of one member in particular, Mr. Robert Lieb, but I also address my remarks to the entire school board. I am here because I want to talk to you about trust. As public persons, as public officials who oversee an institution as significant as our public schools, you are certainly going to be the subject of much scrutiny, as well you should. Those of us in the public are held to high standards because we know our office holds incredible power. And as you well know, this body has the power to shape the direction, focus, and funding of schools for years to come. You have the power to set a course in motion that will affect the lives of thousands of children and their families. I also believe the work of the school board is holy work because your decision shapes the values of a community. And those values are manifested through the principals, teachers, students, everyone affected by the decisions you make as a body. So I want to talk about the comments in the posts, which you, Mr. Lieb, have made prior to this appointment, because it reveals a troubling pattern of disregard for the very real people whom you've been called to serve. When you repost an article that calls the Black Lives Matter movement trash, you are essentially saying that Black lives do not matter. And by referencing that post, it dismisses the very real pain experienced by Black members of this and so many other communities. When you read a post about teaching children about transgender issues as a form of psychological abuse, you create more suffering for those transgender children and their families who are struggling to be seen and heard as whole human beings. When you repost a condemnation of same-sex marriage, you are essentially saying that the lives of those men and women, some of whom will have children in the very school system you have pledged to serve, do not deserve your respect and attention. And when you serve up posts that criticize the Hispanic community, you cause irreparable harm to people who live and work here, who have their children attend our schools and our churches, and whose taxes support this community. So I believe that everyone on this board has agreed to serve because in your heart you want to build the common good. You want your leadership to matter and make a difference. You believe in public service, and I honor you for that. But in order to effectively serve and faithfully serve, you must build the public trust. And Mr. Lieb, your comments cannot be unseen or unheard, but they can be addressed by apology and by engaging with the very communities that you disrespected in your post. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Reverend Rollins. Always.
Good evening, President Hummer, Dr. Arlotto, members of the Board of Education. My name is Pastor Diana Carroll, and I'm the rector of St. Luke's Episcopal Church in Eastport here in Annapolis. And my wife Sarah and I have lived in Annapolis for the past 7 years. I serve on the board of Annapolis Pride, an organization which was formed this year with a mission of celebrating the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community, and engaging local residents, businesses, and groups to unite in welcoming and embracing diversity. Along with many others in our community, as the board of Annapolis Pride, we are deeply concerned about the disrespectful statements that Mr. Robert Lieb chose to share on Facebook regarding several groups of people, including people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer. Many of us on the board faced harassment and discrimination when we were in school, including public schools in this county, because of our sexuality or our gender identity, or both. So we know personally the damage that such hurtful statements can cause, especially when made by public figures in positions of trust. We also know that LGBTQ+ children in our school system have been physically threatened, outed without their consent, and made to feel unsafe and unsupported. PFLAG of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County has provided supportive services to over 30 of these students and their families on an ongoing basis. Mr. Lieb, I don't know you, and I would like to be able to give you the benefit of the doubt. I would like to believe that you were not fully aware of the impact that the messages you shared would have. So on behalf of Annapolis Pride, I am here tonight to ask you to meet with us, to have conversation with us. We want to work with you. We want to work with all of you, the whole Board of Education, to make our schools safer for every one of our children. Mr. Lieb, will you agree to meet with us? Thank you. We look forward to being in touch.
Thank you, Reverend Carroll. All right. All right. Next group is CJ Mushaw, Dr. Ellie Gomez, Jacqueline Alsop, and Carl Snowden.
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I really appreciate being here in front of the public and on the video and also in front of our public servants here. Thank you for serving. I understand that change feels unfair for those for whom the way things have worked out pretty well in the past. But I also want to be crystal clear that I'm not here to address the hurt feelings of advantaged folks making decisions on behalf of the public. We witnessed a beautiful presentation from the county, co-sponsored by the county and also by a women's giving circle at the Maryland Hall for the Creative Arts most recently. And they did an outstanding job of bringing home the point that this isn't about good or bad people. As we were all reminded as we walked into the doors here tonight, we're all in here together. We're all in this together. This is about how structural bigotry, structural racism comes to be. None of us are here because we want to hurt someone else. We're all here because we want to do something good for the people around us, for our children, for our families, for our neighbors. You don't become a racist or a bigot overnight or because you choose to be. Half the time it's implicit. We don't realize it. We have the best of intentions. And when you're in a position of power to make policy decisions, those end up becoming institutionalized systems, institutionalized implicit bias, institutionalized bigotry, institutionalized racism. And when something is institutionalized, it becomes systemic. Every day we're asking our staff members and our students to go to an Anne Arundel County public school system that suffers from structural and institutionalized bias and bigotry. We have the data. That's clear. We need to disaggregate the data on discipline suspensions, discipline referrals, and dangerous referrals. We need to differentiate which of these are mandatory versus which are discretionary. We need to own the fact that the majority of calls to Child Protective Services for African American students happen from our teachers. They're not doing that on purpose. We need to make mandatory implicit bias training for our teachers and staff. We need to make equity goals that cross all departments and not just couched in a single office. And we need to also introduce at a minimum a resolution against bigoted and biased speech for folks on the board, for folks on the committees that choose the members for the board. And if anyone would like to talk more about this, you can reach out to some of us at surgeannapolis@gmail.com or to me personally on Facebook at CJ Mushaw. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Mushaw. Ms. Schallheim.
Dr. Arlotto, do we currently collect data on all those things that she mentioned?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome.
And it's disaggregated. Yes, ma'am.
Wonderful. I would love to see that. If you can email that to us, I would love that. Thank you.
Absolutely. And as we are, with the development of our new strategic plan, is something we talked about earlier today, as did Ms. Ellis and I, that with the development of the strategic plan, we're trying to develop a new data site that's very interactive for the public. And that was something that we talked about the board last year as we developed the new strategic plan and put it into action so that our data can be out there for people to manipulate as they want to take a look at it by school, by student group. And so we've just launched and posted some of that data today, and we're building that site over time. But some of that data went live today.
Wonderful. And then anything that Ms. CJ said that doesn't fall under that, I don't know. Did it cover everything that she
Currently, what's out there on the data, no, but we collect all of that data. So
Wonderful.
I have data sets that I'm glad to share with you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Good evening. My name is Eli Gomez. I'm an assistant professor at Howard University College of Medicine, but I'm not here as a physician tonight. I'm here as a parent. My son, Aiden, attends Serena Park High School. We moved here when he was just about to start middle school. And, I being a scientific guy, I looked at the demographics. I thought, wow, this is great. A lot of mixture, a lot of different cultures and people. This will be ideal. We had no idea the challenges that this community had faced and is still facing when we moved here with regard to race intolerance. He experienced it when he was on the baseball fields with racial slurs being hurled during championship games. He experienced it when he noticed there was a Confederate flag on a public practice field. Growing up in New York City, I never expected my son to be facing the same things that I did when I was growing up in the early 70s. I figured that was going to be left in the past. We'd be educated. We heard it so many times that it would change. I didn't need a degree from Cornell to educate me to the fact that race is a social construct that's entirely artificial with no scientific basis made to advantage one group of humans over another. I didn't need anatomy class to teach me that every human being is exactly the same below the level of skin. So my question to you is about the concern that was expressed so eloquently in the budget with regard to the emotional wellness of young people under duress. And I'm usually a fairly resourceful communicator. This topic makes me angry, and it makes it difficult when it's as personal as my child. I've addressed the problems that my boy is dealing with as a 15-year-old sophomore at the school. Unfortunately, as I've done it, a lot of times what I've gotten from the administrative body is that this is just childish pranks by a few bad actors, that they don't seem to recognize the implicit bias in their own assessment of the degree of the problem that my son is facing. So, young teenagers shouldn't be walking around with their heads down to avoid confrontation, to avoid a slur being hurled their way. He shouldn't be spending so much time trying to figure out how to get transferred to Broadneck, where he feels he's created a network of safety with friends from his church. He shouldn't have to be concerned that his friends on the football team may hear a racial slur and respond inappropriately. So what I'm imploring you to do is to understand that personal biases inform the way you vote on issues, and to understand that the choice even of members to join your board are, in fact, reflections of that bias. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gomez.
Good evening, Dr. Alato, Ms. Hummer, and board members. I am Jacqueline Alsop, First Vice President for the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP, and I am currently President-elect for the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP. I'm speaking tonight both on behalf of the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP and as an NAACP representative on the Anne Arundel County School Board Appointment Commission. The School Board Appointment Commission reviewed applications from and interviewed 9 applicants for the position. During the evaluation process, we each brought our own perspectives and best judgment. We relied on the background information on each candidate that was submitted to us. Subsequently to the final vote of the commission, we became aware of a number of public Facebook posts by Mr. Lee that we're not aware of before our voting. It is a matter of public record that it took 5 rounds of voting before Mr. Lee received the votes needed for his appointment. It is also a matter of public record that I and 3 other members of the 12-member board voted for the other candidate in the final round of voting, in which Mr. Lee received the 8 affirmative votes necessary for the commission to recommend him for appointment. I chose not to vote for Mr. Lee's appointment to the Board of Education because neither his resume nor his interview responses convinced me that he would represent the interests of those whom the NAACP seeks to protect. That is, all Americans. I want to repeat that, all Americans. The mission of the NAACP is, and I here quote, to ensure the political, educational, social, and economical equity of rights of all persons and to eliminate racial bias discrimination. I could not conclude with sufficient confidence that Mr. Lee was sufficiently aware of the equity and civil rights issues and or significantly committed to them to work consistently and effectively toward a goal of equity, inclusion, justice, and protection of civil rights for all of our children, parents, staff, administrators, and teachers. Since that time, I have become aware of Mr. Lee's public Facebook posts, which is in my assessment reflect both ignorance and of hostility towards several groups of people. Becoming aware of this, I joined several other persons, including elected legislators, in publicly writing a letter asking Mr. Lee not to accept the position to the Board of Education. Mr. Lee clearly has enough faith and confidence in himself to go ahead and accept the position. I and others do not share that faith and confidence at this time. Mr. Lee steps into the position of District 30 to represent on the Anne Arundel County Board of Education without the full confidence of the protesters of several constituent groups, as evidenced by those who spoke here tonight. In conclusion, Mr. Lee continues to believe he can support those goals, or if he determines that it doesn't matter whether he does or does not support these goals, and if we determine he is failing at supporting them, then we will continue to bring this attention of the Anne Arundel County Public Schools and the board as appropriate, and we will continue to seek legal redress if necessary. At the same time, we offer not only to Mr. Lee, but to the entire board, to the entire Anne Arundel County Public Schools, our hand in identifying and resolving problems to ensure that together we do accomplish the shared goals of protecting the civil rights of all students and stakeholders at Anne Arundel County Public Schools, elevating all students and eliminating all gaps. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Alsop. Ms. Antoine.
Ms. Alsop, I want to first congratulate you on your new position. Very well earned and deserved. I also wanted to request if the NAACP is not a part of our equity committee, led by Dr. Gillens, if we can invite them to those meetings, I think it would be helpful based on the offer she just made.
We would, Ms. Alsop and I have frequent conversations, and I'm looking forward to us getting back together regularly as you take your new office as president again. So again, congratulations, and so we'll continue to talk. She knows well that they are invited each and every month, and so we're delighted to have her or representative join our committee, our equity advisory, each and every month. And we've been doing that since 2005. That equity advisory's been meeting, and so we'll look forward to it. I'll look forward to us starting our meetings again.
And just to add to that, a board member currently, as far as I know, does not regularly attend that because we don't have a board position for that at this time. But I am volunteering, something I said I would never do again, to be part of that. So we definitely want to work together to manage that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Snowden.
Thank you. I'm here representing the caucus of African American leaders, and I want to ask the board to become more assertive in your leadership. Today we heard, read, and seen another incident at Chesapeake Bay Middle School. A noose. Too many incidents. Tonight, people came to ask for an apology. An apology is important. In Annapolis, the city council went on record apologizing for an incident that took place involving a noose. In 2000, this past Monday, the county council went on record apologizing for a lynching that occurred in Annapolis and in Anne Arundel County. Where's the apology from the Board of Education? Where's the apology from a system when children have been traumatized time and time again? I want to read something that was distributed again from the school system. It comes from the principal, and I'm sure it's done with all the sincerity that she could muster. But I'll ask you to listen to these words carefully. She says, as I've asked before, before, please speak to your child in a manner you deem more appropriate, but hate, bigotry, and intolerance have no place in our school, community, nation, or world. If you're unsure of what to do or say, please contact our school about resources. So a parent comes today and they ask the Board of Education, what should we do? incident after incident occurred. A letter goes home from the parent, from the school, generally from the principal, deploring the act, asking people to talk to their kids. And this continues to happen consistently. Clearly, something's wrong. And it seems to me the board needs to take a more aggressive view of what the board can do. I know that there's controversy in terms of the appointment of the newest board member. And Bob, I'm glad to hear that you have agreed to meet with members of the gay and lesbian community. We extend an invitation to you to come to a caucus meeting, to get to meet people directly, to hear some of their views. But I would ask you also, as one of the new board members, to extend an apology. You've hurt a lot of people. Whether you did it intentionally or not really doesn't matter. A number of people have spoken out. It takes a lot to be able to say, I'm sorry. But it's the beginning of the healing process. And I would appeal to you and ask you directly, are you willing to make an apology to those who were offended by your remarks?
Of course.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Snowden. And then we have two more comments. Chad Jones and Dave Hogan.